She stepped off the diplomatic shuttle with the grace of a blade unsheathed. The landing deck of the Terran high-orbit diplomatic station hissed under the soft burn of Vionian propulsion tech, and the moment her boots touched the titanium floor, the station's ambient temperature seemed to drop 3 degrees. Officers, aides, and one particularly unlucky janitor all cleared her path. Virelai of Vion Prime, strategic advisor to the Ninth Sky, speaker of the Broken Accord, mistress of the Shattered Lance, was not the kind of visitor you welcomed with flowers. Elias Kern stood exactly 20 steps from her arrival point, hands in his pockets, shirt wrinkled, shoes scuffed, and holding a steaming cup of something that looked and smelled very much like liquefied stress. "You're late," she said, in the universal standard tongue, clipped and cool. "You're early," he replied, sipping his drink with zero fear for his own life. "Diplomatic shuttle schedules are more of a suggestion anyway, like expiration dates on yogurt." She blinked. Not because of the joke, but because of the man. Tall, average build, average everything, except for the wild brown hair that seemed to be at war with gravity in the eyes. Calm, amused, and infuriatingly unafraid. He didn't flinch when she narrowed her gaze. "You're the liaison," she said, though it came out more as an accusation than a confirmation. "Unfortunately, yes," Elias said. Elias Kern, linguistics specialist, former exoanthropologist, still recovering from 3 years on a dustball moon where the only nightlife involved bioluminescent fungi. "Welcome to Earth orbit. I was told I would be greeted by someone with decorum. I was told I'd be working with someone who doesn't incinerate staff when they mispronounce her name." For a moment, they stared at each other like opposing chess masters, or maybe two cats about to knock something off a table out of spite. Then her ear, long and curved like a crescent blade, twitched, barely. But Elias caught it. "I like your ears," he said too casually. "Very fantasy space elf meets terrifying war general. Good aesthetic. Are you mocking me?" "Not at all. You look like you could disembowel a man with a single glare. It's impressive. I mean that sincerely." "I have disemboweled a man with a glare," she said, then turned sharply and walked past him. Ilias let out a slow breath. "That's comforting." They walked in silence through the main corridor, the hum of fusion vents and diplomatic banners waving overhead. Virelai scanned everything. Surveillance nodes, guard patterns, emergency exits. She didn't just walk, she measured, like she was always 2 seconds from turning the entire station into an ash cloud, an escape pod. "So," Elias said, breaking the silence as they entered the lift, "did Vion Prime send you here because they trust you to handle delicate interspecies diplomacy? Or because they wanted you far, far away from home?" She didn't answer right away. The lift doors closed. She turned to him with a slow, careful motion. "Do you always speak this much?" "I find it disarms people," Elias said, leaning against the wall. "They expect humans to be overly friendly. It's a species defect. You're not friendly. I'm selective." Humph. They arrived at the diplomatic suites, where an Earthborn ambassador in a bright orange suit tried to welcome her with a bouquet of synthetic flowers and a speech full of recycled peace metaphors. Virelai took the flowers, crushed them in one hand, and handed the remains back with a nod. Elias gave the ambassador a thumbs up behind her back. Once alone in her assigned quarters, gleaming chrome walls, a window to the curve of Earth, and a furniture set that screamed human comfort first, alien anatomy second, Virelai finally relaxed her stance. By 1 millimeter. Elias tossed a datapad onto the nearest table. "First briefings in 6 hours. You'll be expected to not vaporize anyone, no matter how punchable they look." She stared at the pad. "What is Arby's?" "That," Elias said with deep gravity, "is not diplomacy. That's a trap." She didn't laugh, but she didn't kill him either. Later, when Elias was halfway through his 3rd coffee of the cycle, she appeared in the common lounge, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You," she said, "you are the first human I have met who does not grovel. I like my knees too much. You also do not flatter. I'm saving my compliments for when you do something truly incredible, like eat a jelly donut without judging it first." She stepped closer. The air between them tightened. "You are unwise. Frequently, but also lucky. or charming, haven't figured out which yet. Varela tilted her head. You are not like the others. I've been told worse. She stared out the viewport at the earth below. This world is loud. Software full of smells. Why do you defend it? I don't. I live on it. Same way mushrooms live on fallen trees. Doesn't mean I understand it, but I've grown used to the shade. She looked at him, something unreadable flickering behind her sharp gaze. You're strange. You're terrifying. A pause. Then unexpectedly, her mouth curved. Slightly, as if the effort cost her. You have 5 hours to prepare for the summit, she said, turning away. Wear something less creased. Hey, this is how you know I'm working hard, he called after her. Or sleeping in your clothes. She disappeared around the corner. Elias blinked, then let out a low whistle. Well, he muttered, sipping his now cold coffee. That could have gone worse. She didn't throw me out an airlock. Progressed behind him, the security drone assigned to monitor her new quarters flickered a status update. Subject: Vireli. Status: armed. Temper: unstable. Threat level: high. Elias raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I know, but she's got potential. He didn't see it, but in the corner of the surveillance feed, Vireli was watching the same screen. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a weapon waiting to be used. She just felt curious about Earth, about this strange man, and perhaps about what came next. Elias tried to adjust the ceremonial sash for the third time, tugging it like it owed him money. This is a war crime, he muttered, looking at his reflection in the mirror, half diplomat, half stolen drapery. From the seating nook near the viewport, Varela didn't even glance his way. It is tradition. Your traditions involve more glitter than a Terran wedding in Las Vegas. Your planet celebrates commitment with inflatable castles and cake. You have no moral ground to speak from. He gave up on the sash and leaned against the wall. Explain again why we have to attend this dinner with the Zarnathi diplomats instead of sending in holograms or, I don't know, polite excuses in a fruit basket. Because Zarnathi respect face-to-face contact, and because I would rather not start an interspecies incident over a missed dinner invite. Fine, Elias sighed, but if they try to feed me one more gelatinous orb with eyes in it, I swear I'm going to fake a religious fast. Just tell them you are fragile and easily poisoned. That usually buys sympathy. Thanks, I'll put that on my business card. The diplomatic dinner was held in the Arboretum Dome, a simulated Eden of alien flora beneath a containment field of transparent alloy. Neon blue vines curled lazily around glowing trunks. Suspended in the upper dome, floating pollen lights shimmered in time with the soft pulse of classical Rogelian music, which sounded suspiciously like a theremin in a blender. Vireli moved with absolute composure, nodding precisely at each bowing Zarnathi, their translucent membranes gently fluttering. Elias followed, smiling like he'd had dental nerves removed. You do not need to bow so deeply, Vireli muttered from the side of her mouth. I'm not bowing. I'm trying to avoid eye contact with the appetizer. The Zarnathi leader, glistening with a formal layer of protein lacquer, spoke in melodic syllables, which Vireli translated mid-sentence without blinking. They greet us in the spirit of shared evolution and ask if you are the alpha of your species. Elias gave a polite smile. Please tell them I'm absolutely not, but I've met our alpha, and he cries when he stubs his toe. She raised one elegant eyebrow, but passed on a more diplomatic response. The meal commenced. Elias poked at his plate like it might move, while Vireli consumed her share with slow, practiced efficiency. They are impressed by your presence, she said at one point. I'm impressed by the fact that this thing is still wiggling. They consider food movement a sign of vitality, and I consider it a sign to run. After the third course, some kind of puffed root drizzled with biofluorescent syrup, Vireli turned slightly toward Elias. Her voice was low. Why are you not afraid of me? He paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. Should I be? Everyone else is. Well, to be fair, you do have a reputation for turning threats into craters, but I don't know. You don't seem like you'd disembowel someone for sneezing wrong. She tilted her head. That is an oddly specific example. He grinned. You say that like it didn't already happen. Her silence was neither confirmation nor denial. Later, as they exited the dome, Virali said nothing for a long stretch. The corridor lights shifted to accommodate their presence. Overhead, the orbital view screen displayed the stars crawling slowly across the black. "You were right about the sash," she said finally. Elias blinked. "Wait, what? I almost slipped. It tangled." "Ha! See? Even alien warlords aren't immune to ceremonial fashion failure." She looked at him sideways. "Warlord? Term of endearment." They walked side by side, not close, but not distant either. The next morning, their schedule included a security walkthrough of the diplomatic annex, where tensions were rising due to Vion Prime's recent flexing of patrol routes near Jupiter's moons. Vireli scanned each hall like it might explode. Elias scanned vending machines for edible caffeine. Halfway through, a security officer dropped a tablet. Vireli caught it midair. The officer stammered. She handed it back without a word. "He'll have a story for his grandchildren," Elias murmured. "He will need grandchildren first. I'm sure he'll attract someone. Shaking, terrified admiration is charming in some cultures." She didn't smile, but her ear twitched again. In the afternoon, while prepping for a debrief, Elias sat sprawled on a couch with his shoes off and datapads scattered like confetti. Vireli stood at the far end of the room, silently watching a recording of a Vionian newsfeed. He heard the tone before the translation. Political unrest. The trial of a Vion scientist for emotional compromise. Words like impurity and sentiment floated by. "They still do that?" he asked. She didn't answer. He leaned back, balancing a pad on his knee. "You're not like them, are you?" "I am Vionian. Yeah, and I'm technically part Irish, but you don't see me fighting with a shillelagh every weekend." She frowned. "What is a shillah? Shillahi? It's a stick. For hitting things. Never mind." She turned off the feed. He looked at her, seriously now. "You don't have to be what they expect." "And what do you expect of me?" "Honestly, I expected you to call me a pest and request reassignment. That can still be arranged. Not before you try a donut. I have read about this donut. It is a fried sugar ring with no nutritional value. Yes, that's the point. I do not trust it. Welcome to Earth cuisine." At 2300 station time, they were called in for a briefing about possible infiltration attempts by an unknown third faction trying to sabotage the Earth-Vion peace process. Virali, fully armored, reviewed the data with cold precision. Elias, in a hoodie and mismatched socks, scrolled the files with one hand and munched on something called a space bagel. "They're trying too hard, Mankun," Elias said. "See that? The encryption pattern is Vionian, but only on the surface. It's a mimic script. Standard black market overlay. You are certain? I once dated a hacker who used this trick to hide my birthday gift in a cursed video game. Took me 2 weeks to find it. Still got the rash." She narrowed her eyes. "You are strange." He shrugged. "I'm still here." She stared at him for a long time, then turned back to the console. "We will investigate tomorrow. Together." "Of course." "Good, because I already packed snacks." "You pack snacks for diplomatic investigations?" "You don't." She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. The ventilation duct was barely wide enough for one human. It was not wide enough for one Vionian. And yet somehow Elias had managed to wedge himself into a corner of the shaft, while Vireli remained crouched beside the access hatch, scowling at the faint hum of motion sensors beyond. "This is your plan?" she whispered. "Crawl through human air tunnels and hope we don't trip a security override?" "It's not just a plan," Elias whispered back. "It's a classic. The sneaky duck crawl maneuver is practically a rite of passage for all underpaid Terran personnel." "I am not underpaid." "Then I guess you're doing this for fun." The hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing a dim corridor lit in emergency blue. Vireli moved first, silent as a phantom. Elias followed, somewhat less phantom-like, landing with a noise best described as a wet boot in mashed peas. "I was graceful once," he muttered. "You were never graceful." They advanced down the corridor. According to the intercepted data, someone or something had tapped into the station's diplomatic relay to plant false messages between Vion Prime and the Terran Senate. Messages meant to trigger distrust, Escalate old wounds? The signals were bounced from within the station's outdated subgrid, a place mostly used now for storage, scrap, and suspiciously high quantities of forgotten chairs. I swear this hallway wasn't on the map, Elias said, checking his wristpad. It's like someone built a whole horror movie wing and forgot to tell facilities. The interference is growing stronger. Something is near. Please let it be a friendly alien with a gift basket. They turned a corner and stopped. In the center of the corridor stood a levitating cube, black metal, humming low, like a restrained growl. Its edges flickered with light, occasionally phasing in and out of sight. Virelli's posture shifted, hand resting near her concealed weapon. That's not Zarnathi tech, or Vionian. It's not Terran either, Elias said. I mean, our stuff usually has a manufacturer's label and at least one typo. Virelli moved toward it slowly, scanning. No known signal ID, no language patterns, but the energy profile is familiar. To what? To the Riven Accord collapse. 17 cycles ago, a similar signature destabilized an entire moonbase. Well, that's historically alarming. The cube suddenly pulsed and projected a thin beam of red light at the wall. Symbols burned themselves into the metal, shifting like a puzzle. Elias stepped forward, despite Virelli's hissed warning. Hold on, I recognize that, he said. This is hybrid glyph code. Someone's embedded Terran linguistic structure into an old off-world dialect. Clever. I doubt they did it for praise. He tapped the last symbol. The cube dissolved into black dust. The wall slid open, and on the other side stood something neither of them expected. A lab, hidden, sterile, buzzing with tech from multiple worlds. A fusion of Vionian interface panels, Terran holographics, and Zarnathi fluid core processors. Screens blinked with intercepted messages, reconstructed facsimiles of Elias and Virelli themselves, speaking conversations they had never had. Someone's trying to forge a diplomatic meltdown, Elias said quietly, and they have excellent voice synthesis. I mean, listen to this. My fake voice sounds less nasal than the real one. I'm actually offended. Virelli moved from console to console. This equipment is not cobbled together. It is refined, coordinated. This was built by someone with access, high-level clearance. A quiet chime sounded behind them. A hologram blinked on. It was Elias. Well, look who finally found the party, the hologram said, grinning with perfect teeth. Took you long enough. Okay, that's just creepy, Elias said. The hologram continued. You two have been an entertaining pair, but curiosity always leads the mouse to the trap. Don't take it personally. This isn't about you. It's about balance, about control. Who is that? Virelli asked. I have no idea, but I suddenly feel like I should have changed my passwords more often. The lab began to shake. A soft whine built in the floor. Self-destruct protocol, Virelli said. We must go, now. They ran, corridor lights flashing red. Behind them, walls retracted, reshaped. The station was hiding itself from the inside out. I thought sabotage plots were supposed to be slower, Elias said as they ducked through a side vent. You have watched too many Terran dramas. They taught me valuable survival skills, like how to run from explosions in slow motion. They tumbled into the maintenance hub just as the section sealed off. Behind the thick door, a muffled whump signaled the destruction of the secret lab. Panting, Elias leaned back against the wall. Well, that escalated. Virelli didn't speak for a moment. Her fingers brushed the scorch-marked floor. Someone knows too much. You're thinking internal sabotage. I'm thinking political theater. With corpses. A silence settled between them. Then Elias looked at her, squinting. Wait, when did you say the Riven Accord collapse happened? 17 Vionian cycles ago. Why? Because that tech in the lab, it looked freshly built, recent, but the energy pattern was identical. You think someone replicated the original event. I think someone was there, and they're doing it again. Virelli stood slowly. This mission just changed. So, less diplomacy, more survival, more hunting. I knew we'd get to the fun part eventually. Back in their quarters, Virelli reviewed the fragmented data Elias had pulled before the lab blew. Coordinates, names, a fragment of a voice signature embedded in the false diplomatic messages. and a single Vionian symbol, Jai Marath. She stiffened. "What does that mean?" Elias asked. She didn't answer. He stepped beside her. "Hey, you okay?" "It is an old name," she said quietly. "It was erased from our records. A myth. A warning." "Of what?" She looked up at him, and her walls cracked just a little more. "Of someone who once made me believe I could trust them." Elias didn't say anything. He just sat down beside her and handed her a donut. She took it without a word. They sat there, not in silence, but in a kind of stillness. Outside, stars drifted on, and somewhere out there, someone was waiting. Elias had always considered himself fairly adaptable. He could handle space turbulence, awkward elevator silences with reptilian ambassadors, and even surprise food replicator malfunctions that turned coffee into clam chowder. But nothing in his training, or his therapist's wildly optimistic pep talks, had prepared him for hiding out in the vent systems of a Vionian war cruiser while reviewing surveillance footage of his own face committing interstellar treason. "That's not me," he whispered for the sixth time. "I know it's not you," Virelli replied, voice flat. "You don't blink that much, right? He looks like he's trying to flirt with a security camera, or fighting back tears from eating your spicy Terran noodles." "They're not that spicy. You nearly lost consciousness." Details. They crouched above a secure hangar bay, where a sleek, unauthorized vessel was currently being loaded with data cores and a disturbingly large number of fusion cells. Virelli zoomed in on the crew. Half wore generic tech uniforms. The others wore the all-black, insignia-free suits of private contractors, the kind that smelled like plausible deniability and unpaid taxes. "Contractors," she muttered. Elias tilted the viewer. Is that Drellin plasma tech they're carrying? That's illegal on 5 moons. 7. And you do not want to know what happens on the 7th. I'm going to guess someone explodes. They melt, slowly. Neat. Let's avoid that." The ship's transponder was masked, of course, but Virelli had already cracked it using a triangulation protocol that would have made most encryption engineers weep from inadequacy. The registry that flickered across the screen didn't surprise her, but Elias let out a low whistle. "The Sable Orchid? I thought that ship was destroyed after the Lissari coup." "Clearly it was not." "Cool. So now we're dealing with illegal weapons, identity theft, ancient enemies, and a ghost ship. All we need now is a space curse, and we'll have the whole set." One of the loading crew looked up suddenly. Virelli tensed. The man scanned the vents with precision, far too practiced. She didn't breathe. Elias barely resisted the urge to sneeze. The man moved on. "I don't like that guy," Elias whispered. "He scans vents like it's a hobby. He has tactical implants. Even worse, probably ruins every poker night." They retreated silently, crawling through ducts until they reached a service shaft that opened into an unused engineering wing. The lights flickered. A panel sparked in the corner. Elias eyed it warily. "Either this place is haunted or your ship needs a mechanic. Vionian vessels are designed for resilience, not aesthetics." "Yeah, well, right now your resilient ship looks like it's about to develop sentience and ask us to leave. I would prefer that to our current situation." They stopped beside a maintenance terminal. Virelli bypassed security while Elias pulled out a protein bar labeled "Emergency Ration, Vanilla Chicken." He opened it, sniffed it, and made a face. "I think this bar has achieved sapience." "Then do not anger it." He nibbled it anyway. "Tastes like regret and floor polish." "Perhaps it is improving." She loaded a holographic map of the war cruiser. A new location pinged, an inner chamber labeled simply Scar Vault. She stared at the designation, unmoving. "That word again," Elias said. "It's not a word," she replied softly. "It's a name, and not one used lightly." "You want to tell me who this Scar Vault is?" "No." "Well, I wasn't expecting a full biography, but even a vague, 'he ruined my life' would have helped." She looked at him. Not angry, not annoyed, just tired. "He was once my mentor. Let me guess, brilliant, manipulative, ended up evil?" "Number worse." He believed he was right. Elias paused. "Those are the scary ones." She nodded once. "He taught me to read people, to calculate, to trust nothing. Then he betrayed everything." "Is he Vionian?" "He was Vionian. Now he is something else. And he's here." "Yes, Well then, Elias said, dusting crumbs from his jacket. Let's go crash his space party. They slipped through the underdecks until they reached a ventilation shaft that overlooked the Scar Vault chamber. Inside was a room unlike any other on the ship. Smooth obsidian walls, curved like the inside of a polished shell. In the center stood a circular control dais, surrounded by holographic images of various galactic sectors, each with red threads connecting anomalies, wars, political standoffs. A man stood at the console, tall and calm, his back to them. He wore no armor, just a dark coat lined with data nodes, glowing faintly along the collar. His ears were long, Vionian, but his hair was cut short in the Terran style, and his voice when he spoke was deep and patient. They think conflict is a failure, he said to someone off-screen. But conflict is evolution. Peace is maintenance. War is growth. Viralai exhaled slowly. That's him. Elias peeked through the grate. He has a very punchable aura. Scarvolt continued, gesturing toward a series of blinking coordinates. Once the forged transmissions destabilize their alliance, we deliver their construction assistance. That is how you win loyalty, by tearing down and offering to rebuild. A second figure stepped into view. Human, young, clean-cut, wearing the insignia of the Terran Senate's diplomatic corps. Elias blinked. Oh no, that's Kyle. He's from admin. You know him? He used to handle printer paper requisitions. Why is he here? I suspect he was promoted. They listened as Kyle, not a name suited to galactic treason, Elias thought, reported that the final transmission was ready. The message would accuse Vion Prime of sabotaging Earth's solar grid. The reply from Earth would suggest Vion operatives kidnapped a senator's child. No one's going to believe that, Elias whispered. They will, Virelli said grimly, because the child was taken. Last night, the report came in while we were underground. They really did it? They're using real crimes to back up fake evidence? It's the perfect trap. They slipped away quietly. They had less than 2 hours before the message went out. Virelli moved fast, her brain calculating angles, probabilities. Elias moved with her, still trying to wrap his mind around Kyle, the paper guy being involved in the downfall of interplanetary peace. Back in their quarters, Virelli opened a private comm channel. To whom? Elias asked. To someone who owes me a favor. Friend? Not quite. The comms buzzed. Then a voice answered. A growling bass with an accent that sounded like a blender full of gravel and sarcasm. Is this about the time I bailed you out on Vesca Prime? It's about that and something worse. Worse than the soul leeches? Yes. Wow. Okay, I'm listening. Elias mouthed. Soul leeches? Virelli ignored him. She spoke quickly, clearly. The favor was accepted. Help would arrive within the hour. Then she turned to Elias. You still have those forged message fragments? On a drive, yeah. Why? We're going to give Scarvolt a transmission of our own. Oh, we're doing counter-forgery? Excellent. I have just the voice for it. I will write the message, but I'll perform it, right? She tilted her head. Let me have this, he said. It's been a long day. Fine, but if you use that ridiculous accent again... I am not a villain, Elias said in the accent. You are many things, she said, but not that. The corner of her mouth twitched, and that, for now, was enough. The transmission went out at exactly 3:17 standard ship time. Virelli monitored it from the auxiliary command console, arms crossed, eyes focused, jaw clenched in a way that made Elias suspect she was either calculating orbital physics or composing a murder haiku. Your version of me has a surprisingly high opinion of my acting, he said, still staring at the paused image of himself on the holoscreen. I sounded like a dignitary who swallowed a weather satellite. You sounded like someone important, which is what matters. I also added dramatic pauses. That sells it. We'll see if the Terran consulate thinks so. The counter-forged message embedded with metadata, keyed to Scarvolt's own encryption algorithms, claimed Vion's highest Warfleet general had been blackmailed. It also implicated the Sable Orchid in clandestine destabilization, tying it directly to a third rogue faction Virelli had fabricated using actual events from her old spy files. Layers within layers. The goal wasn't to convince anyone of one truth, it was to make everyone doubt all of them. In her words, confusion is the seed of delay, and delay is how we survive. The response was faster than they hoped. Within minutes, several monitoring satellites belonging to the Terran Coalition flagged the discrepancy, followed by a coded inquiry from the Galactic Peace Tribunal. Scarvault's plan wasn't just stalling, it was publicly unraveling. You realize we just committed about 16 diplomatic crimes, Elias said. 19, she corrected. 20 if that signal piggyback corrupted a Corellian weather array. Oh, it definitely did. There's a blizzard warning in the tropics now. She didn't smile, but her left ear twitched. That was something. The corridor lights flickered as the Sable Orchid began to decouple from the war cruiser's docking array. Scarvault was pulling out. Whether it was retreat or repositioning, they didn't know. But the stolen cores, the fake transmissions, the kidnapped child, everything pointed to one last card he hadn't played yet. We have to stop that ship, Varela said. I know, but how do we board it without turning into quantum soup? We don't. Wait, that sounded ominous. We're going to force it to dock again. With what? Angry language? With this. She pulled up a concealed override signal meant only for Vion emergency protocols. Scarvault wouldn't expect it. No one had used it since the Ren dissidents. She input the coordinates and armed the command. If this works, she said, he'll have to drop shields for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Not a lot of wiggle room. Then don't wiggle. She hit the command. In the hangar bay, alarms howled as the Sable Orchid shuddered. Lights dimmed. The docking clamps, already disengaged, suddenly reversed, snapping onto the freighter with a precision that felt almost violent. Scarvault's voice echoed across the comms. Impressive, but you're 2 steps too late. Varela tapped into the channel. You always did underestimate improvisation. Improvisation, he replied, gets people killed. Not today. Then let's end this. Gladly. They moved fast. With the ship forcibly docked, they stormed the gangway with a motley crew of loyal Vionian engineers and one surprisingly enthusiastic former cafeteria cook named Rel. I've always wanted to be part of a mutiny, he shouted, wielding a lunch tray like a shield. Just don't block the lasers, Elias muttered. The corridors inside the Sable Orchid were tighter, older. This ship had seen battles, then been scrubbed of identity and polished for mischief. They split into teams. Virali went after the bridge. Elias tracked the power core to disrupt Scarvault's final transmission burst. As he ducked under a flickering conduit, he caught a reflection of himself in the polished wall, covered in soot, probably bleeding, definitely sweating, and grinning. Who am I? He whispered. And when did I become a space action guy? From the shadows, a plasma bolt barely missed him. He yelped, dove, rolled, sort of, and tackled the attacker. It was Kyle. Oh, come on, Elias groaned. You're an admin, Kyle hissed. You think paperwork isn't war? No, because it isn't. They wrestled like 2 angry mop handles until Elias finally pinned him under a fallen support beam. Kyle wheezed. You'll regret this. No, I won't, Elias said, and slapped a sonic cuff on his wrist. Also, we're definitely revoking your printer privileges. Meanwhile, Virali reached the bridge. Scarvault was waiting, leaning against the main console like a professor at the end of a long, smug lecture. His eyes were tired, but sharp. You didn't need to come here, he said. You didn't need to betray your people. I freed them from complacency. You chained them to paranoia. He stepped closer. And what did you do, Virali? Hide among humans? Fall for one of them? Her fingers curled. He sees people. That's more than you ever did. Scarvault activated a pulsing core above the command dais. This ends with a new Vayon, one not ruled by fear of outsiders. Then let it begin with you out of the way. She lunged. The fight was brutal. Less graceful combat, more clawing between 2 people who knew each other too well. He was stronger. She was faster. He had prediction algorithms. She had spite. In the end, she drove his own data blade into the core console. The overload flared blue, knocking Scarvault back. He slumped, unconscious. Not dead. That was enough. Back in the docking bay, Elias watched as the kidnapped senator's daughter, rescued by Rel in the lunch tray, ran into her father's arms via emergency comm. "You okay?" he asked Viralai as she returned. "I've been worse." "You look terrible." "So do you." They smiled. It was weird. A week later, on a neutral station orbiting the twin moons of Naraxi, peace talks resumed. Viralai, reinstated as a liaison, wore her Vionian uniform without the armored shoulders. Elias attended in a blazer that definitely wasn't his, but smelled like cookies in danger. Afterward, they stood by a viewport. "You could have gone back to Vayon," he said. "I could have, but I've never liked could have. I prefer will." He raised an eyebrow. "And what will you do?" She looked at him. Really looked. Her long ears twitched once. "I will stay. For now. That's all I get." "You also get this." She leaned in. No grand speech, no dramatic swell of music, just a quiet, dry whisper against his ear. "I even like your stupid jokes." He laughed. "You mean love. Don't push it." They watched the stars in silence. No longer strangers, no longer afraid. And somewhere, deep in space, the last echoes of Scarvolt's plan faded into static. The dropship rattled like a tin can full of angry bees as it broke through the atmosphere of Tersa 4. Captain Dane Keller sat strapped into his harness, arms crossed, teeth clenched, silently praying to the gods of inertia dampeners. Across from him, the alien woman, Thalexa of Nira, sat upright, eyes closed, hands folded in her lap like she was attending a polite tea party instead of hurtling toward what military intel politely called a semi-stable zone. "I envy your calm," Dane muttered, tightening his harness another notch. "You meditate through atmospheric turbulence. I clench so hard I might invert." Thalexa's eyes opened slowly. Deep silver irises glinted in the dropship's dim lights, and her long ears gave the faintest twitch. "I was not meditating. I was recalculating the likelihood of us vaporizing on impact." Dane blinked. "Thanks. That's deeply comforting." "I did not say the likelihood was high. You didn't say it wasn't either. Would that have changed anything?" Fair point." The pilot's voice crackled through the comms, bored and nasally. "Touchdown in 90 seconds. Brace for turbulence and possible hostile reception. Local time is 1400. Surface temperature, warm enough to cook your lungs if your helmet fails. Have a nice day." Dane checked his plasma sidearm. "He always this cheerful?" "I believe he once hosted a children's program," Thalexa said without inflection. Dane narrowed his eyes. She had a deadpan delivery that made it impossible to tell whether she was joking or just really, really alien. The dropship thudded against the landing pad with all the grace of a drunk mammoth. Hydraulic clamps hissed and locked, and the side hatch slid open with a groan. Red dust blew inward immediately, coating everything in a fine grit that would probably take months to fully clean out of joints and crevices. Dane led the way down the ramp, scanning the dusty plateau that passed for a diplomatic exchange point. A few prefabs sat squat in the distance, like boxes someone forgot to unpack. No welcoming committee, no flags, just wind and the occasional scream of a flying lizard in heat. "Homie," he muttered. Thalexa stepped lightly beside him, boots leaving barely a trace in the dust. She wore a close-fitting suit of midnight blue synthweave, diplomatic insignia on one shoulder, a thin cloak on the other. She looked like a sci-fi elf wandered into a war zone. He caught himself staring again and immediately frowned. "All right, let's get this show over with," he said. "I've got a bad feeling about—" The first blast came from the ridge, vaporizing a rock 2 meters from his left foot. The second blast took out the nearest prefab in a fireball. Dane instinctively tackled Thalexa to the ground, shielding her with his body as plasma bolts lit up the plateau like a holiday parade. "Karg!" he shouted, already rolling to cover behind a twisted bit of shrapnel. "How did they find us so fast?" Thalexa sat up, utterly calm, dust clinging to her high cheekbones and long white hair. "They may have followed the beacon." "What beacon?" She pointed skyward. Dane squinted, and sure enough, a flickering pulse of light was emitting from a small drone, high above, circling like a shark. "That beacon," he groaned. "You couldn't have mentioned that earlier?" "You did not ask." Plasma fire intensified. 4 Karg warriors crested the ridge, 7 feet tall, armored like tanks, faces like angry armadillos. Dane raised his sidearm and fired, hitting one in the chest and knocking it down the slope. But more were coming. He turned to Thalexa. "Stay behind me. Protect yourself." He never got to finish, because Thalexa was already on her feet, and what happened next would stay burned in Dane's memory until his dying day. She moved, not ran, moved. Like physics decided to take 5 and let her rewrite the laws for a while. One moment she was standing beside him, and the next she was 30 feet away, slicing through the nearest Karg with a motion too fast to fully see. Her hands had shifted, fingers lengthened, gleaming with translucent energy, tipped with curved claws. Not mechanical, not weapons, just her. She spun, leapt, slid under a plasma bolt, and drove her claws into a second Karg's throat. Armor crumpled like tinfoil. Dane just gaped. A third tried to bring its cannon around, but she twisted behind it, arms looping around its head. There was a brief, awful sound like someone snapping a tree in half, and the Karg collapsed. The last one panicked. He could see it. Tried to run. Didn't get far. Thalexa's hand shot out. A wave of force, pure kinetic pressure, slammed the fleeing warrior into a boulder, where he stuck for a moment before sliding down in a heap. Silence returned. Even the wind seemed stunned. Dane slowly emerged from behind the debris. He stepped around a sizzling helmet and surveyed the carnage. Plasma burns, severed limbs, ruptured armor. The air smelled like ozone and roasted crab. Thalexa stood in the middle of it all, calm and unbothered, adjusting the clasp on her cloak. He stared at her. "You?" "Yes. You ripped them apart. They attacked us." "Right, but with extreme prejudice." "Would mild prejudice have been preferable?" He stared, slack-jawed. She tilted her head slightly. "You are unharmed." "Yeah," he said slowly. "No thanks to me." "I thank you for attempting to shield me," she said politely. "I didn't attempt." "I did. I threw myself in front of you like a heroic idiot." "You did. It was very brave. Also very inefficient." "I'm not used to being out-badassed by my escortee." "I am not your escortee." "Technically you are." She looked at the smoking wreckage. "I believe I have now escorted you through battle." "Touché." A long silence passed. Somewhere in the distance, another lizard screamed. Finally, Dane shook his head. "All right, from now on, you're in front. I'm back up." Thalexa smiled faintly, ears twitching. "Agreed." He looked around again, sighed, then tapped his comm. "HQ, this is Captain Keller. Exchange compromised. A diplomat's fine. Hostiles neutralized. Send cleanup. And maybe a therapist." He paused. "For me?" Thalexa raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You are surprisingly fragile." "Emotionally, yes." She nodded, utterly serious. "I will take that into consideration." They sat beneath the shattered wing of the dropship, chewing on ration bars and watching a column of black smoke rise into the tersen sky like a guilty confession. Dane tore another bite off his chocolate-flavored brick and grimaced. "This is definitely not chocolate," he mumbled, inspecting the wrapper. "It says Choco Nutrient Simulation, Batch 4H. I swear, Batch 4G actually tasted like something. Like despair, but chocolate-flavored despair." Thalexa nibbled hers with the polite disinterest of someone humoring a cultural custom. "Your food technology is uniquely punitive." He nodded. "Yeah, it's part of our military training. If the food doesn't kill you, the enemy probably will." Her long ears gave a faint flick. "That is either profound or extremely stupid. Possibly both." They'd set up a makeshift perimeter while waiting for evac. The Karg weren't likely to return. Those who escaped probably had no interest in being vaporized by a silver-haired Nerian whirlwind again. But Dane wasn't taking chances. He'd planted 2 auto turrets, set a wide-angle sensor sweep, and gave up trying to guess how the Nerian beside him managed to still look like she was posing for a royal portrait. "I meant to ask," he said between chews, "what exactly was that back there?" "You know, the claws, the kinetic blast, the very thorough decargification of the ridge." "I defended myself." "Yeah, I noticed. in the same way a black hole defends itself against passing matter. She wiped her hands neatly on a cloth that had emerged from somewhere inside her suit. I was created for such scenarios. That gave him pause. Created? You mean trained? Her eyes flicked to him. You misunderstand. He leaned back against a rock. That's becoming a theme. There was a pause, like she was weighing whether to continue. Then very softly she said, I am Nerian, yes, but not born in the conventional sense. My form was cultivated. My mind accelerated. I reached mental maturity in 3 standard years. My purpose was diplomatic, on paper, but my body was engineered for more. You're a weapon, he said without judgment. I am a person, she corrected evenly. But yes, a very effective one. Dane exhaled slowly. So that means, hold up. When Command assigned me to escort a non-combatant representative of the Nerian Accord, they lied to you. Of course they did. Classic Terran Command. Escort the elf lady, Captain. She's delicate and important. Try not to sneeze near her. Meanwhile, she can turn a carg into soup in 12 seconds. I was faster with the third one, she added almost thoughtfully. He looked sideways at her. You counted? She arched a brow. You did not? He stared, then broke into a laugh. Oh, this just keeps getting better. A chirp from his datapad interrupted them. He scanned the incoming message. Great. Our evac's delayed. Sandstorm grounded the shuttle on Orbital 6. ETA, 4 hours. Thalexa looked up at the sky. That would explain the pressure shift. Your atmospheric vehicles are deeply fragile. He sighed and flopped backward. So we're stuck here with smoke, sand, ration bricks, and corpses? Not all the corpses, she added. Some are merely disassembled. Nah, that's not comforting. She tilted her head. Would you like me to attempt comfort? I'm starting to think you were grown without that module installed. She stared for a moment, then said, I was not designed for empathy. It developed naturally. That shut him up for a while. They passed the time in silence, broken only by the occasional beep from a turret or a sarcastic remark from Dane about the culinary merits of synthetic cheese packets. Eventually, he found the courage, or stupidity, to broach another subject. So, those claws, is that something all Nerians have, and you guys just never mention it at parties? No, just you. She hesitated. There may be others, but none like me. I was the final iteration of the Nerian-Terran initiative, the hybridization experiment Dane set up. Wait, hybridization? You mean they mixed human and Nerian DNA? Yes. And you're the result? Yes. He blinked. That explains the sarcasm. Her lips twitched. And the appetite for synthetic despair chocolate. Truly our most defining trait. Something about the revelation sat heavy in his chest. Not fear, though the part of his brain responsible for survival definitely wanted to keep her on the friend list. But something else. Sadness, maybe. That she wasn't just a person who became a weapon, but a weapon who had to fight to be seen as a person. Did you have a choice? He asked. She glanced at him. To exist? To become what you are? A long pause, then she said, No, but I have choices now. He nodded slowly. Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're on my side. I am not assigned to your side. Don't ruin it. A soft hum suddenly interrupted their shared moment. The perimeter sensor glowed amber. Dane sprang to his feet, weapon drawn. Thalexa was already standing, body poised, head tilted slightly. They waited. The hum shifted in pitch. Then a small, wheezing bot the size of a dog rolled over the ridge, dragging a broken wheel and coughing out distorted music. Is that Earth disco? Dane muttered. Thalexa listened. Yes. Donna Summer, I believe. The bot wheezed out, I feel love, through glitchy speakers as it twitched and sparked. Recon drone, Dane said, relaxing. Carg make. Damaged. Probably broke from the main patrol. The bot swiveled its lens toward them and emitted a burst of static. A tiny flag popped out the top, reading, Surrender. They both stared at it. Thalexa stepped forward and calmly kicked it onto its side. The music cut off mid-synth. Dane raised an eyebrow. Problem solved? It requested surrender, I declined. He laughed. Next time, I want that on a t-shirt. They sat back down again. After a while, Dane said, "So, what's next for you?" "Finish the mission," she said. "Then, I decide." "You're not going back to them, are you?" Alexa's expression turned distant. "They made me, but I am not theirs." Dane leaned back and looked at the sky. "Welcome to the club." He tossed her another ration bar. This time she didn't hesitate before biting into it. The evac shuttle arrived 4 hours and 22 minutes late. Dane had counted every one of those minutes, mostly to distract himself from the taste of the third cheese packet, which he swore was conspiring with his digestive system to trigger a full-scale mutiny. When the shuttle finally broke through the thick swirl of sand and touched down with a hiss of plasma vents, he stood, saluted it, and muttered, "About time, Princess Rescue." The loading ramp descended, revealing a tall, red-faced pilot with a greasy wrench in one hand and a zero-interest expression in the other. "You the ones who called for pickup?" the pilot asked, already lighting a cigar with a flick of his finger-mounted igniter. "Couldn't land sooner. Atmosphere here's got the stability of a drunk octopus." "We noticed," Dane replied. "Thanks for the luxury timing." "Hey," the pilot grunted. "You want fast? Call a smuggler." Alexa nodded politely at the pilot, who immediately paused mid-cigar puff, eyes lingering on her long silver hair in inhuman grace. "You brought an envoy out here?" he said, incredulous. "In that?" Dane patted the twisted wreck of their dropship. "She held up better than it did." The pilot shook his head, puffed smoke, and motioned them inside. The shuttle's interior was tight and smelled faintly of fried circuitry and strong coffee, like someone had tried to make a cappuccino with plasma coils. As the shuttle rose, leaving the ruined landscape behind, Dane slumped into a seat and let his head fall back. Safe at last. A panel sparked near his left arm. Safer adjacent. Alexa, as usual, sat perfectly upright, scanning the control panels with calm curiosity. "Where to?" the pilot asked from the front. Dane tapped into his datapad. "Command outpost on Sarah Station. We're delivering the Nerian Accord's diplomatic corps, minus the other delegates, who are, let's say, indisposed." "Dead?" "Very, very indisposed." The pilot grunted, locked in coordinates, and punched the throttle. Sarah Station came into view an hour later, a glittering ring-shaped platform orbiting the desert moon of Lume. It was half administrative hub, half battleground triage center, and 100% underfunded. The shuttle docked with a concerning screech, followed by a clunk that Dane pretended wasn't suspicious. As they disembarked, a pair of guards scanned Alexa with portable bioscanners. One of them blinked at the results and turned to Dane. "Sir, this one's reading anomalous. Multiple spectral layers in her DNA. Some we can't even classify." "She's my +1, Dane replied. "Be nice, or she'll reclassify you." Alexa offered a serene smile. The guard nodded vigorously and stepped aside. The main corridor of the station was a symphony of flickering lights, overworked personnel, and arguing scientists. A medical droid sped past carrying 3 different limbs that may or may not have belonged to the same person. Dane led Alexa into a debriefing room, where General Irwin waited with a frown deep enough to store small tools. "You were supposed to arrive with 4 diplomats," Irwin said without preamble. "You brought one, and you were late." Dane dropped into a chair. "We were ambushed, the Karg tried to kill us, and the evac was delayed because of sand that behaves more like sentient soup. We're lucky anyone came back." Irwin looked at Alexa. "You. I am the last of the Nerian delegation. You survived an elite ambush?" Alexa inclined her head. "I did not survive. I won." Irwin blinked. "Well, that's efficient. Your other envoys would not stop arguing," she added, tone flat. "Even during the attack," Dane interjected. "We think one of them tried to surrender using a gift basket. It didn't work." The general sighed. "Fine. We'll debrief later. For now, you're both cleared for quarters and resupply." As they left, Alexa glanced at Dane. "He did not ask whether I required emotional support. Is that normal?" "He barely asks if we require oxygen," Dane muttered. "You'll get used to it." They found their quarters down a dim hallway with half-lit door panels. Dane's room was sparse. Bunk, console, metal sink that hummed suspiciously. Thalexa's was directly opposite, though she examined it like one might a zoo exhibit. There is a glowing orb above the bed. That's the ambient light. It pulses. That means it's working. She stared at it. That is not comforting. Later that night, Dane was awakened by the chirp of an encrypted message on his console. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and squinted at the screen. The message was flagged top secret. Nerian code classification embedded in the signal. He knocked gently on Thalexa's door. She opened it within seconds, fully awake, not a hair out of place. "You're not even pretending to sleep, are you?" he asked. "Nerians do not sleep the way you do. We enter stasis cycles when needed. I had not initiated one. Lucky you, we've got a message. From your people. High priority." She followed him inside, glancing at the screen. As the code decrypted, her face remained unreadable. Dane read aloud. "Mission amended. New objective. Extraction of experimental subject from Terran custody. You are authorized to use force if necessary." He looked at her. "That sounds ominous." She said nothing. "Thalexa?" Her voice was soft. "The subject they speak of is me." He sat back. "You're the objective? They want me returned, even if it means war." "Well, that's not great." Thalexa stepped back. "I will leave. I do not want Terran lives lost because of me." "Hold on," Dane said. "We're not handing you over like a misdelivered pizza. You are not obligated to help me." He folded his arms. "Number. But I'm choosing to." There was a long pause. Then Thalexa said, "That means more than you know." He offered a weak smile. "Well, it's the least I can do. You did save me. Twice." "3 times, she corrected, "if you count the cheese packet incident." "Oh, I counted." Outside, the station lights flickered, and somewhere, deep in the black, another ship was already on its way. The alarm didn't just go off, it screamed, blaring across Sarah Station with the urgency of someone discovering their airlock door had just filed for divorce. Dane was halfway through a half-burnt protein waffle when the red lights started spinning, the overhead AI voice calmly informing everyone that this is not a drill, which was hilarious because drills usually involve fewer orbital assault ships. He kicked his boots on, grabbed his sidearm, and opened the door to find Thalexa already waiting, fully geared and looking mildly annoyed. "I told you," she said, "your waffle would betray you." "You didn't say that." "I implied it, heavily." They jogged down the corridor as the intercom repeated, "Incoming vessel identified. Unknown configuration. Energy signatures consistent with Nerian architecture." "Okay," Dane puffed, "so let's assume this is your welcome wagon." "They're not here to welcome me," she said, voice level. "They are here to retrieve me. By force." "Retrieving you by force implies they never expected you to leave willingly." "They didn't. Your people have some serious abandonment issues." The central deck was chaos. Technicians shouting, officers barking orders, soldiers sprinting to turrets like angry ants. A holographic projection of the incoming vessel hovered above the main table. A long, elegant Nerian dreadship, glimmering with bioluminescent filigree and bristling with weapons that looked far too artistic to be so deadly. Irwin stormed into the room, barking at his aides. When he saw Dane and Thalexa, his expression crumpled into a face that could curdle milk. "Care to explain why a Nerian warship is 10 clicks from my orbital window?" "They're not here for coffee," Dane said. "They want her back." Irwin looked at Thalexa, then at Dane. "She's not leaving." "She doesn't want to leave," Dane snapped. "She left them. She chose to. And now they're violating treaty space to drag her back," Irwin muttered. "Diplomatic incident incoming." "I'd rate it explosive," Dane said. "Possibly catastrophic if they try teleporting anyone into your bathroom again." Irwin glared at Thalexa. "You're a weapon. You're their weapon. Why should we trust you?" She stepped forward. "Because I could have torn this station apart the moment I arrived. I didn't." Irwin opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Point taken." The console buzzed. The station AI declared, "Nerian vessel requesting live channel. Incoming hologram." A shimmering blue figure formed above the table. Nerian, male, tall, draped in ceremonial armor like a diplomat who moonlighted as a hitman. His long ears marked his status, but his voice held no warmth. "Thalexa." She bowed slightly. "Varen, you are in violation of Protocol 12. Return to vessel custody immediately." "I am not your subject anymore." He ignored her, addressing Irwin. "Commander of this facility, we are retrieving what is ours. Stand aside and this will be bloodless." Irwin scowled. "That what is a sentient being? She's not property." "She is property we created," Dane cut in. "Yeah, and so was pineapple on pizza. Doesn't mean you should keep pushing it on people." Varen's expression didn't flicker. "You speak out of turn, Terran." "You pointed guns at our station," Dane said. "I think my turn came early." The hologram shimmered, then vanished. Irwin exhaled. "Great. We've got 5 minutes before they try boarding." Dane looked at Alexa. "What's the play?" She was already walking toward the weapons locker. The Nerians didn't bother with subtlety. Their teleport pods punched through the outer station hull like glowing syringes, embedding with surgical precision. Soldiers in gleaming armor poured out, their energy blades humming with menace. Dane ducked behind a blast shield, firing short bursts from his pulse rifle. One of the Nerians lunged at him, and he barely rolled out of the way as a spear of blue light sliced into the floor plating. Then the floor plate launched back at the attacker, literally as Thalexa surged past, her body a blur of silver and flame. She hit the soldier so hard his armor folded like bad origami. Dane popped back up. "Was that his leg I just stepped in?" "Focus," Thalexa called. They pushed toward the central reactor hall. The Nerians weren't trying to destroy the station. They were targeting her. Every move, every strike, was calculated to isolate and extract her. "You know," Dane said, panting, "they're really committed to being bad exes. Do you always make jokes in battle?" "Only when outmatched, or terrified, or both." A pair of Nerian commandos cornered them near the reactor core. Dane braced for impact, but Thalexa didn't attack. She spoke, voice low but firm. "You don't have to follow their orders. You were made like me. You can choose." The soldiers hesitated. One stepped back. The other raised his weapon, and was promptly flung backward by a kinetic shockwave that cracked the wall behind him. Thalexa lowered her hand slowly. Dane blinked. "Was that new?" She tilted her head. "I am evolving." "Okay, so add terrifying to impressive." They reached the command center. Irwin was bleeding from the shoulder, shouting at tactical officers. "You need to go," he said. "They're locking onto you. They'll take this whole station down if they think you're still here." "I'm not running," Thalexa said. "No," Dane added. "We fight, together." Irwin looked at them both, then nodded. "Then let's buy time." Thalexa turned to Dane. "There's a way. I can override their command channel. Speak directly to their ship's AI." "That sounds like a diplomatic risk," Dane said. She gave a faint smile. "Good. Diplomacy is my least effective setting." She pressed her fingers to a console. Lines of alien code flowed around her. The room dimmed, pulsing with energy. When her voice rang out, it was amplified through the entire station, patched directly to the Nerian dreadship. "I am not yours. I was never yours. I was made, not born, but I chose who I am. If you continue this assault, you will no longer face me as your experiment. You will face me as your enemy." Silence, then. The Nerian ship powered down its weapons. Irwin's jaw dropped. "What? What just happened?" "They heard me," she said. "Finally." Dane leaned against the wall, exhaling. "I think I just fell in love a little." "You say that often." "Usually when someone saves my life." Thalexa turned to him. "Then I hope you have room for more." Because something new had just lit up on the scanner. Another ship, not Nerian, unknown signature, and it was coming in fast. The unidentified ship dropped out of warp with a visual ripple like the universe had hiccuped. Sensors screamed in protest, lights flickered, and half the bridge crew on Sarah Station instinctively ducked, even though no one knew what they were ducking from. It didn't match any known Terran, Nerian, or even black market schematics, which meant one thing. "Either this is a friendly visitor," Dane said, squinting at the holographic readout, Or the universe decided now was a great time to add a third enemy. Irwin crossed his arms. I'm out of middle fingers to give at this point. The ship was shaped like a crescent blade, seamless and black, not painted black, was black, like it absorbed light and encouragement. It hovered 1,000 meters off Sarah's hull and didn't move. No weapons charge, no transmissions, just there. Then the station's AI chimed in with its usual chipper deadpan. Unidentified vessel transmitting signal on pan-frequency band. Translation in progress. Warning, semantic structure not optimized for organic comprehension. Fantastic, Dane muttered. We're getting contacted by space poetry. Alexa stepped forward, placing a hand on the console. Let me try. Do your people know this language? Number, but I might. The console responded to her touch, glowing faintly as her energy synced with the transmission. Symbols flickered, warped, reformed. Then a voice came through, alien, but intelligible. Deep, melodic, old. You carry our shadow, return it. Dane blinked. I'm sorry, what? Alexa's eyes narrowed. They're not speaking to the station. They're speaking to me. Irwin gestured wildly. And what exactly did you do to get this kind of attention? She turned slowly. When I disconnected from the Nerian network, I didn't just sever my bond. I tore a piece of what they embedded in me, a fragment of something they didn't understand. Something older. I've been hearing whispers since the drop site. Dane threw up his hands. And you waited until now to mention ghost code haunting your brain? I thought it was metaphorical. Everything in space is metaphorical. Even our coffee. The alien voice repeated. Return it. The lights in the room dimmed. Consoles shorted. Everyone flinched as the ship outside unfolded. Literally unfolded, stretching like a creature waking up. A second layer of hull shimmered into existence, and a pulse of something, not energy, not sound, but presence, swept through the station. Dane steadied himself. Okay, let's say you do return it. What does that mean? Alexa looked at her hand, then at him. I don't know, but I think they want me to choose. Another pulse hit them, this one gentler. Dane saw flashes, visions, memories of other worlds, other wars, ancient machines using beings like her as carriers, living keys to power they couldn't contain. You're not just a weapon, he said quietly. You're a vault. She nodded slowly. And the lock is breaking. Irwin grunted. So, we're sitting on a galactic piñata that might explode if we don't let the weird space monks outside take it back? No pressure, Dane said. Just the fate of reality. Alexa stepped toward the main viewport. The alien ship loomed silently. She closed her eyes, breathing in deep, and for a moment her skin shimmered with something beyond light. Lines like circuitry, like language, like history, ran across her cheeks, her arms. She spoke, not in Terran, not in Nerian, but something else. Something Dane couldn't translate but felt. The alien ship responded with a pulse that didn't hit them like a wave. It passed through them. The moment it did, the oppressive pressure lifted. The station's systems stopped glitching. Everything held its breath. The ship sent one last transmission. The cycle ends. The vessel has chosen. It folded back into nothing, as if reversing its birth, and blinked out of existence. For a long beat, no one moved. Then Dane said, Okay, so we all hallucinated that, right? Irwin sighed and sat down. Whatever that was, it's gone. And so is the threat. Alexa remained quiet, still watching the stars. Dane approached, gently touching her shoulder. You good? She smiled faintly. I feel empty, but not lost. Whatever was buried in me, it's gone now. Returned. Now you're just a nearly invincible warrior with questionable taste in Terran food. I'm learning. Irwin came over, tossing a small data chip into Dane's hand. HQ just sent new orders. You're both off the roster for now. Dane raised an eyebrow. That a retirement? Temporary. They're calling it Special Diplomatic Recovery Leave, which means get off my station before someone else decides to invade. Warm send-off. You want a hug? Dane clapped him on the back. One day, Irwin. One day. They boarded the evac shuttle again, this time intact, on schedule, and not under fire. Dane dropped into a seat with a groan, stretching his legs out. "So," he said, looking at Thalexa, "what do you want to do now?" She considered. "I would like to see Earth and eat something that doesn't come in a foil packet labeled meal adjacent." He grinned. "I can do better than that. There's a noodle place in New Shanghai that survived 5 interplanetary economic collapses, probably because their broth has some illegal molecules in it." "Perfect." They sat in silence for a moment, the stars wheeling past outside. Dane spoke again, quieter. "You know, when I met you, I thought you were the one who needed protecting. I never did." "I know that now." She leaned back, smiling. "Still, you tried." "Yeah, I'm stubborn like that." She nodded. "I'm glad you were." The shuttle engines hummed, the stars streaked, and somewhere behind them, warships stood down. AIs archived their alerts, and for the first time in too long, no one was chasing them. The journey ahead was unknown, but for once, that didn't feel like danger. It felt like freedom.